We currently do not have a vice chair of the committee. I have been asked to fill in as an alternate and to lead us through today. So the first item of business is the council planning committee meeting, and I will call the meeting to order. I will note in attendance that Councillor Kelly, Councillor Feeney, Councillor Allsap, and myself are present. Councillor Sanderson is not yet joined the meeting, and Councillor Carr is absent. We also have members of the public members of the committee in attendance: John Baltudis, Paul Jennings, David Joyce as well. And while they will not vote in the planning committee meeting, they are invited to make any comments. With that, I will ask for disclosure, pecuniary interest, and general nature thereof from anyone. Seeing no items, we'll move to item number 3, which is public meetings. And this month, we do not have any public meetings. And so I'm just going to double check from a procedure point of view. I don't believe we need a motion for that. I'm just to say that we don't have any public meetings. And so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Allsap. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Appreciate everyone being gentle with me. So we'll now move to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, and I will call the meeting to order and note that we are in attendance. I am filling in for Councillor Paul Carr, who is not available, and Councillor Sanderson has not yet joined the meeting. The members of the public, Mr. Baltudis, Mr. Jennings, Mr. Joyce, and we are still waiting for Ms. Brown to join. With that, I will ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is reading and confirmation of the minutes of the City Council Planning Committee meeting and Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on July the 5th, 2021. And that information was included in the package. Moved by Mr. Jennings, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Any questions or discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. There are no deputations today. There is no separate correspondence from what is in the reports, and there are no referrals from the public meeting. So we'll move to item number 7, which is under reports. The staff recommendation report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment for bylaw 3014, 474 Point Anne Road, City of Belleville, and the owner is Robert Hayward. And the resolution or the recommendation is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council: that zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended be amended by rezoning the portion of 474 Point Anne Road zone development DR zone to rural residential RR zone. Moved by Councillor Allsap, seconded by Mr. Joyce. Ms. McAdam, do you want to present the staff report on this?
Thank you, Mayor Panchuk. So we, as staff, have recommended that the zoning application be approved as proposed. Really, what's happening here is the applicant's proposing to build a detached accessory garage on their property. Their property is partially zoned development zone. This was more of like a holding zone, basically, because there's no services on Point Anne Road or at this portion of Point Anne Road. However, this detached garage is it's not going to incur a servicing issue. It's really just so this person can make use of their property and have this accessory building in that development area.
Thank you very much. Members of the committee, any questions or comments on this application? Councillor Feeney.
Great. Hello, I say Mark Coral, but it's Carol Feeney. All right, considering that this application has received clearance by County Conservation under Section 59.2 of the Clean Water Act and falls within Point Anne's intake protection zone and has received staff recommendation and approval, I think it's a good thing to approve it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else, any comments or questions? All right, the motion is on the floor that the committee recommends it. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So we'll move now to 7.2, 2, which is the staff recommendation report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 10245 for 144 St. Paul Street, City of Belleville. The owner is Dr. Ajay Paul with Waterfront Dentistry, and the agent is Mr. Arshad, Siddiqui. And the recommendation is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council: that zoning bylaw number 10245 as amended be amended by rezoning 144 St. Paul Street from general industrial M2 zone to non-retail commercial C5 zone. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get on the floor? Moved by Mr. Jennings, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Ms. McAdam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So staff have recommended to approve this application as proposed to rezone the property to the C5 zone. This zoning matches the property, the zoning of the abutting property at 146 St. Paul Street, where the existing dental office is located. The rezoning will facilitate what staff determined to be an appropriate and functional building addition to allow for the expansion of the existing dental clinic office and the provision of adequate parking for that office. The parking spread out along the property, so staff have looked at that and determined that the parking was well planned for. There was some public comments with respect to the abutting residential property on the northeast corner of 146 St. Paul Street. Those comments were addressed in the planning report, and there's been some correspondence with the applicant regarding a proposed privacy fence in this area, and those details would be from my determination finalized during the site plan approval process. So that correspondence has been passed on to the approvals department, and staff have recommended this application for approval for the subject land, which is 144 St. Paul Street. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. McAdam. Anyone have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And it's carried. So move now to 7.3, and it is the staff recommendation report for the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. It deals with bylaw number 10245 for the southern portion of 40 Yeomans Street, formerly known as the Ben Bleecker property. The owner is the City of Belleville, and the agent is Dillon Consulting Limited. And along with the report that we'll hear the introduction from Ms. McAdam, there is a full staff recommendation report, and then there are 9 attachments, which include the location and existing official plan map, the existing zoning map, the proposed official plan map, the proposed zoning map, the conceptual site plan, the planning justification report, the preliminary design with respect to road reconstruction, photos from the staff site visit, and then public correspondence that has been received. So I'll ask for a motion again on the floor, and then we'll ask Ms. McAdam. So Councillor Alsop and Mr. Baltudis. Ms. McAdam, do you want to introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff have recommended that the applications, both the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment for the southern portion of the subject lands be approved. Generally, as proposed, there was a number of recommended conditions that would be attached to both the official plan designation of the property as well as the zoning of the property, including a holding symbol, which outlines some requirements for additional information before that holding symbol be removed. Staff concur that the proposed conditions appropriately acknowledge that there's important technical and urban design related considerations that do require further study and implementation through the site plan process prior to development occurring. From a land use perspective, however, the proposal appears appropriate and good planning to convert these lands to a commercial land use designation and supporting zoning. Staff have recommended that the recommended condition for the traffic impact study be slightly changed because there was a traffic analysis that was completed as part of the municipality's Schedule B municipal class environmental assessment. So we call it the MCEA. And this process happened because of the proposed widening to Sydney Street and improvements to the Sydney and Bridge Street West intersection. So this traffic analysis, and this was confirmed by senior engineering staff, really looked at what they determined to be the potential highest and best use for the entire subject property at 40 Yeomans Street. So it considered a very intensive, traffic intensive land use over both portions of the property, and the improvements to the intersection as well as the Bridge Street West corridor were planned accordingly. So as long as the site plan maintains conformity with the findings of the traffic analysis, staff determined that that would be sufficient with respect to any future site plan, rather than requiring a new traffic impact study, since this traffic analysis has been completed and it was quite a thorough investigation. So I will, I'll leave it at that, and if anyone has any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I'll open up for questions, and I'll start with Mr. Baltudis.
Desta, thank you for that in-depth report. I guess my question is, while they're doing the intersection of Bridge Street and Sydney there for Yeoman, what about the redevelopment of where the old racetrack used to be? Would the redevelopment of that intersection take into consideration the possibility or whatever is going to happen on that property so that we only go through that construction redevelopment of that intersection once?
I believe that it did consider the redevelopment of the racetrack area as well. I know that Deanna O'Leary is on the call right now, and she's the project manager for this reconstruction project. So perhaps she has a little bit more details in terms of the considerations of that traffic analysis.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. As long as we know that in the future or moving forward, that there's redevelopment there, let's not redo this intersection 2 or 3 times, that's all. As I use that intersection a lot, and construction, as everybody knows, that intersections can be a bit of a pain.
Deanna might be able to shed some insight.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Desta. Just to speak to the Sydney Street widening and Bridge Street West intersection improvements project. In short, yes, the traffic analysis looked at redevelopment of the entire former fairgrounds site, as well as the subject Bleecker property. And again, highest and best use, major traffic numbers for both of those sites have been incorporated into the proposed reconstruction plan.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Baltudis? No, then I'll go to Mr. Joyce and then Councillor Alsap after that.
So I have 2 questions, actually a continuation of Mr. Baltudis' question. The development of the intersection and the timing of that vis-a-vis the development itself, maybe you can either Desta or others that can respond to that. And my second question is through Desta would be the northern portion. Are we going to see that next month, or is there any concerns or anything happening on the northern portion? Because last month we talked north and south, this month just the south. So I'm just curious about the north. So I'll turn those back to you to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am aware that the city plans to proceed with the detailed design for the road widening and intersection improvements in 2022, with the reconstruction actually occurring in 2024. I'm not aware of the timelines of the applicant with respect to their site plan application. I imagine that the site plan application would shortly follow if this application were approved. They do need to follow the consent process as well to formally sever the lot. So there is, additional planning applications in their future as well. And obviously additional informational requirements as part of the conditions of these applications, which will take some time for them to accumulate. However, yes, I'm not sure about the alignment of their plans with the city's plans to move forward. And of course, the city's plans are always contingent on budget approval. However, that is at least the estimated timeline from a municipal perspective on the road reconstruction being around 2024. With respect to the north portion of the site, the residential property I expect to see coming either within this next month or the month to follow, potentially back to a public meeting. They're evaluating comments received as part of the public process, and potentially looking at the site and seeing if this is the final design they want to move forward with. So I anticipate we'll see it either next month or the month after.
Thank you, Ms. McAdam. I guess just back to the traffic, so that the traffic widening will be done before the development. Is that what you're saying? In other words, I guess I'm trying to determine is the development going to happen and then the widening thereafter in terms of concerns about traffic. I don't know whether you have any further on that. So.
Right. The development may occur before. It would the site plan approval process, depending on when they enter into that process, and then obviously their construction works will need to occur. So it may come first. However, that timing should for the widening at least should shortly follow.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joyce. Councillor Alsop.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Dessa. I think that this is a great proposal and certainly a great way to re-envision some underutilized land in that area of the city. And as a former resident of that neighborhood, certainly a grocery store and some other shops, and bring a little more retail and commerce to that area is going to be a great boon for that neighborhood. I did have some people reach out to me on the environmental front, and I understand that would be part of the holding provision, that we would have an environmental assessment done. I was just wondering if we did have any previous, even outdated environmental assessments on that property, and whether we had a sense of sort of the scope and what might be required to do a remediation if necessary, and if our partners, the provisional buyers here, are aware of that and prepared for it.
Thank you, Councillor Alsop. There were previous environmental studies completed. I imagine that they would have been available for the potential purchasers, or it could be made available. They will need to be updated to current standards, and then remediation would be determined from there. I believe that there's some current monitoring well on the northern portion of the property. So I know that there must be some monitoring or occurring on the site. But yes, the holding provision does capture the fact that further environmental study does need to occur on the property, and a record of site condition would need to be obtained.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Alsop. Anyone else for questions or comments on this item? So I have a couple, Ms. McAdam. So first of all, and just to follow up to Councillor Alsop's question regarding the environmental assessment, I can confirm that the purchaser has engaged their own company as part of the due diligence they had to do on that site prior to making the offer. So they do have information. And one of the conditions for the holding zone is that environmental site assessment and record of site condition would be provided to the city as part of the process to lift that holding restriction. Secondly, and I believe that's on page 11 of the report in terms of the explanation of that. And then secondly, the city is right now in the midst of receiving approval from an environmental assessment perspective on that intersection. And so we are doing the engineering work. Ms. O'Leary is here to answer any questions about that, but we've done the engineering work. We're waiting for that approval. And then once that's done, it can then go to City Council as part of the capital budget process. And so while we have some timeframes, they can be sped up if the province of Ontario expedites their end of the environmental assessment. And so, again, it's just a matter then of tendering the project. But we do have some work that we're waiting for them to complete. But that traffic study that went into that environmental assessment as Ms. O'Leary said, contemplated a very intensive use, much more intensive than can possibly occur on both sides of Sidney Street. And so we will do, I think the concern was, would we do the intersection and then have to come back and do it again? Won't be the case. The first time the intersection will be reconstructed will be based on the high traffic amounts. There were 7 comments received from residents in the neighborhood, and they had a wide range of comments and concerns, and some of them discussed the northern application, which is not before us today, as we're only doing the southern portion. They spoke about the residential part of it, and that's going to go through its own process. We had a public meeting. The potential purchasers are considering that as they look at doing their plans, but that'll come back, and the committee will be able to consider all of the recommendations as well as all of the feedback. But they really are not related at this point, because at this point we're considering the commercial activity on the southern portion. And when it comes to on-street and off-street parking, because that was raised by a number of folks, there will be sufficient off-street parking as part of the application, as is stated in the report. And then just really quickly, in terms of the road reconstruction, I think Mr. Joyce asked that question about when would the intersection be reconstructed versus when could this potential development go ahead if we approve it today and council approves it on the 9th. Under the highlights, I think it's just important that the site accesses for both Sidney Street and Bridge Street West have been coordinated with the design work for the road reconstruction to ensure that there are no traffic engineering concerns with the proposed service entrances, as well as that off of Yeomans Street. As I said, there were 7 pieces of public correspondence, which I think is a relatively low number, and that all of the items that were raised in the public process have been dealt with. It's staff's opinion that the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement. And the community commercial zoning, the CC zone that we are looking at doing, permits a variety of uses. One of the misunderstanding of some people is they believe that the city can decide which individual businesses will locate on sites. We zone for use, not for individual businesses. And so, for example, in this case, we cannot select which grocery store might open up shop on the site. That is up to the landowner to negotiate a contract with a grocery company. But we can say that it is to be a grocery store. And there's a listing of all the different commercial activities that can be there on page 8 of the report. I have one question, Ms. McAdam, and that just deals with the holding symbol, which is not unusual for the city of Belleville. We often want to be able to give some assurance to the property owner and the developer that their use is permitted, subject to them checking off the requirements we have, especially in receipt of information. And so the question regarding the holding symbol, we have it there. One of the items is for evidence that adequate municipal water and sanitary sewer capacity is available. Do we need to have that in there? Are we really concerned that that we will not be able to provide this development with those adequate services?
Right now, I think that condition could be satisfied with the functional servicing study or a servicing study that would be submitted during the site plan. I think right now it's a safeguard measure so that in case any improvements did need to be made. Environmental Services did make a general comment about a potential upgrade to a water main along Bridge Street. But again, it was a very high level comment, and they'll wait for the servicing information to come through from a site plan perspective, which should satisfy that condition. But there's no raised concerns at this point in time that servicing couldn't be achieved on this site. It is just a matter of flagging that the servicing information does need to come at site plan.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Well, and those are the questions and the comments I made from the report that members of the public can go online and see for themselves. The last thing I just want to say is this is a very exciting day, and we've had you know, a number of steps along this route last term, and I want to pay a little bit of tribute to former Councillor Jack Miller, former Councillor Edgerton Boyce, and current Councillor Kelly McCaw, who on behalf of the last council negotiated the Belleville Ag Society relocating from the east side of Sidney Street. So this particular property. And the reason why we did it is because we felt there was a better use. And we knew there were community needs. I can say that the current city council, when we declared the property surplus and started receiving bids or tenders on the property, we specifically chose a purchaser who committed to putting a grocery store on the site, because we had heard loud and clear from folks in the West End that they wanted a grocery store on that site. So to be able to now deliver this offer that the city has conditionally accepted, we have to go through this rezoning process before to satisfy the conditions that we've committed to. But to be able to do that at this point really is great, and it's a long process as we go through these things. But this is what we have deliberately and specifically on purpose brought ourselves to this point, and we are looking forward to development of the southern portion and what may come in the north. And I'm looking forward to City Council hearing the committee's recommendation and supporting it next Monday. So with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item number 8, which are information matters. And we have the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment monitoring report to August 3rd, 2021. And so I need a motion to receive, moved by Mr. Baltuta, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or comments regarding that report? I thank everyone for doing that, for not having questions this month. You can pose those to Councillor Carr next month when he's back. So I'll call the vote to receive. All in favor? It's carried. Any general business this evening? And again, I thank everybody for their being gentle with me today. So before adjournment, the closing remarks are that the Planning Advisory Committee's applicable decisions will be forwarded to City Council for consideration, forming part of the agenda for the City Council meeting to be held at a future date. And so with that, I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Feeney and seconded by Mr. Jennings. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice evening.